Oh, it's showing recording on my end too. I can't click it. Okay, you're doing it. Cool. Awesome, guys. Wonderful, wonderful. Sometimes we have technical difficulties with these new platforms that we mess with. That's always fun. Hold on, let me get this out of my way here. Okay, so good morning. Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm here with all of my wonderful friends, Catherine and Dan and Karen, Sandy, and Jason. And for those of you who would love to participate with us, we'd love to have you. So, but before we get going, oh wait, I need to say what we're talking about. Let me grab my book. All right. So we're continuing our discussion of the book, Your Soul's Plan by Rober Schwartz. And we've been talking about kind of where all these ideas come from and the different types of psychic and mediums and channels and all of that. And Catherine's been absolutely wonderful explaining all of that to us. And but I think we're ready to jump into the first chapter of the book now. And but before we do, I want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then Catherine, you can take it from there.
Hi, I'm
Good morning.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm Karen Lohoff from Arizona, where it's pretty hard, as you can imagine. In fact, I stepped outside just long enough to take the garbage out, probably about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I came back in and I said, you know that new ad that has your skin as bacon, and then it puts it in the fry pan and it says, this is your skin in the sun. I said, that's exactly how I felt outside.
Good morning, Sandy, in also hot, sunny Miami Beach. And our beach is open this week, so you know that I'm happy. Yeah, so looking forward to the discussion. Excited. I love this chapter.
Hey guys, Jason here. Glad to be here. Hey, Catherine, Samantha, Karen, Dan. Good to see everybody. And yeah, let's discuss this book, Your Soul's Plan. Who's it by again? My book is on its way, so I'll have to catch up with everybody. But looking forward to the discussion. Glad to be here.
Dan in hot Las Vegas. I'm like Karen is. We're usually just a few degrees lower than what they are, but if they're hot, then we're hot, and it's definitely been there. And it's dipping down and getting now into 90s, which is still hot, but we're looking to go back up. So I'm enjoying the weather and looking forward to the discussion this morning.
Good morning, it's Catherine Clement in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And not sure exactly what chapter 1 is about. I need to order the physical book because the Audible doesn't break it up in a way that's understandable. But I know that it's continuing on with the concept of whether we plan everything before we come in, and talks about what a gift suffering is to people because it moves them into different learning. And so if someone has read the first chapter and has any ideas or questions about that, come on out.
I was just kind of going through the chapter here, and I think that pretty much in the first chapter he's talking a lot about the idea of pre-birth planning, and then why we might do that. Okay, Sandy, I saw that you were trying to jump out. Feel free to jump out.
Yeah, I had just read the chapter mostly, so it's fresh in my mind. So it's, I'll give it a little synopsis. Yeah, it tells about like why we incarnate and why we plan these life challenges. And I thought one of the things that I really liked that I read, you know, like, I guess the basic idea is like when we're in the spirit world, you know, when we die and we go back to spirit, like we're in this place where there's no contrast. Like we're full of love and compassion and all these amazing feelings. And we come to earth to feel that contrast, because one of the examples in the book is like, say at home in the spirit world, there's this amazing music always playing, and you don't realize how amazing it is because you don't have a contrast. So you come to earth and you may hear these dissonant sounds and this and that, and then it makes you appreciate the beautiful sounds you heard at home. And you don't necessarily remember those sounds from home, but you may be able to channel them, or someone who composes amazing music creates that sound again and it reminds them. So we come here to have that contrast to really remember who we are, because in a spirit world, we don't have that contrast. And so when we're going through pain here or a learning process, it's temporary, but it's so quick in the perspective of the soul. Like our little flash of a life here is so quick, but it's eternal. Whatever we go through here, it's eternal in our soul, whatever we're learning or processing. So to remember that as we go through painful or challenging experiences, that this is for our soul in all of eternity, and it's just a little blip of time in the whole expanse of everything. And one other part that I liked was about karma, because I think a lot of times we think about bad karma, but it was saying how there's no good or bad karma. It's a law of karma, like a law of gravity. You don't blame gravity for something, so we can't blame karma for something. And we may have, you know, we choose before we come here, we choose our parents, we choose where we're going to live, we choose all of this. Like we have these meetings in the spirit world to plan, okay, what am I going to do in this life to get to this thing that I want to resolve, whether it's a fear from a past life. So we have these meetings with other souls in the spirit world, and then we come here, and a lot of times the souls that we meet on earth, like if you meet somebody who, I feel like I know you, like there's somebody that you were probably talking to, they were in your soul family in the spirit world or in past lives, and like people that we know now in our families, we could have been in another role with them in the past. Like my mom could have been my child in the past, or my father, or an enemy, you know. So a lot of times when we're meeting people in all our lives, like it's recycling of the same soul that we're meeting our soul family again and again in different forms, and healing karmas. Like they used an example in the book about someone who was a caretaker for someone in one lifetime, and then in the next lifetime, the person who was ill became the caretaker of this other person. And you don't know it in that life, and you may think, well, this sucks, I'm this caretaker, but in the bigger realm of things, it was returning sort of this karma, this favor that they helped me in the past life, and I'm helping them now. So yeah, those were the basic gist I got out of the chapter. If anyone has insights or comments or questions on any of that stuff, lots of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that it brought up was just a little story about how he was reading his child a bedtime story, and then after he was done, she said, "Oh, remember, Daddy, when I was your mommy and you were my child and I was reading you a bedtime story?" And I think sometimes kids have memories of stuff like that more easily they're still open enough. They're not closed down enough by the world. Sometimes it might be imagination, spurring comments like that. You never know. That's the whole point. You never know, though. She could definitely have memories. And one of the things that it talks about is there's, I don't know how to explain it really, but life and death is so different than what we experience it as here on earth. It's really more, instead of like what we think of as a life and a death, it's really more just a refocusing and a disallowing of focus. So the veil comes in to kind of block out all the stuff that we normally have the ability to see. And that's why I keep saying over and over again when we're talking about mediums and channels and all these different labels that we like to give people, all of us have all of those abilities because that's natural to our spirit or our soul or whatever you want to call it. So when we come into this experience, our focus closes way down. It's like when you have one of those flashlights, and it's got a big wide beam, and then you can turn the front of it so that it goes down into like a little pinpoint. That's kind of what we do. We're like this big, broad light beam, and then when we come into this experience, we kind of focus that down. So all we have is that one little point of focus, which is this experience. And some of us maintain or refine some of those openings to the other experiences. A lot of people, I think, open up right before death. And the reason I say that is because I've just been at so many bedsides with someone dying and they see a loved one there with them. They'll just all of a sudden start talking to their dad or their mom or somebody that's already passed over, So as they're nearing that transition time, they start, I think, evidently, they start to get back some of their, their flashlight beam is opening back up to the whole experience instead of just a little piece.
Another thing I just was remembering too that I liked out of the chapter is about how, as we are if we're going through challenges and we see the appreciation of it, or the good side of it, not the fear or the doubt or all of this, as we become, I forget how they word it, but in this higher frequency of energies through our own things in our own life, that is expanded through everywhere, through the humans, through the spirit world. Like, we're so connected, and we come here and we have this, because of our minds, we have this illusion of separation, but we're so all connected. And so if I'm exuding love and joy, that is felt. Even if I'm, like they said, if something like if you're just alone somewhere on a mountaintop and you're exuding joy, it's going to be felt, even if you're like miles in the middle of nowhere from people. So I thought that was important too, to remember, in the times that we're in now, too, to really working on ourselves and having that, all those high frequency energies exuding from us make such a huge change for everybody. And I think we forget that, and it's easy to forget that and go into our own world. And so that's something that reminds me to focus on that too, that for others, not just for myself.
I like that you brought that up, Sandy, just with all that has been going on in the world. And, that's just something that I have been doing, like every morning when I get up, is just filling myself with this positive, loving energy and, pulling it up from the earth and allowing it out around and through everyone. And you know, the other day we were out riding the motorcycle. I was riding as passenger with my husband, and we were going around around the city, not all the way around, but we did this big kind of half moon loop around the lower part of the city, and then we cut through the middle, which meant we were going through downtown where all the craziness was happening. And I just had this feeling that I needed to like circle the city with love energy. And so as we were going around, I was visualizing our starting point where we had started, and I knew we were going back to that, and I was just like, I don't know, breathing out or exuding or something. I don't even know what it was, but I felt compelled to do it, and I just kind of visualized that I was surrounding the city with love. And I know that that helps. I mean, I just know it does. I don't know how. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me in the reasoning world, if you will, but I know that it makes a difference. And you know, I did notice that here in Indy, somebody had posted a video. Actually, I think it was my daughter-in-law. She had posted a video on Facebook where there were protesters that was kind of like a standoff between the protesters and the police department in front of the governor's house, and it ended up being resolved in a peaceful way instead of more violence. And I just sent so much gratitude towards that, and it was, I don't know, I know it makes a difference when we're all thinking love thoughts and we're all spreading love thoughts, that it helps people to be more open to love. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because the whole aspect of the spirit world versus our, you know, our human world, it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to imagine, and yet it's so easy to imagine, you know, I don't know. So that was my thoughts on that. But previously when you were talking, you were talking about his discussion of the music from the spirit world, or wherever, your music of home, and then you come to a new place and you don't hear that music. And it reminded me of when I hear a song I haven't heard since I was a child, and the feelings and the emotions and the just everything that comes up from that. Or when I hear a song from my teenage years and it reminds me of my friend who passed away, and it's those kinds of things. And I feel like that is, you know, what he's trying to express here in this book, is how, you know, as spirits, we kind of have all of this knowledge and everything that is happening all at the same time. And sure, it's all beautiful and wonderful, but we have no contrast. And so then we come down here to earth, or we transition to human form, and we can experience those things even inside our own lives here as humans. We can experience that, and we forget that. And then when you were talking about those feelings you get where you've like, oh, okay, I know this person, I've just met them, but I feel like I know them. I can totally relate to that in so many different ways. And I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years where I just, you know, I just felt like I knew them. You know, there's a lot of people I don't, but you know, there's those certain people you just kind of have a connection with them, and you really don't know why. And you know, who knows? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is pre-planning ahead of time, and or maybe it's just because we are all connected in the spirit world, and when we come down here we feel disconnected, but then we connect with somebody and we're like, oh, hey, I know you. I don't know.
There was something about this discussion that reminded me of a part of that chapter where he kind of pleads with us to read the stories with our hearts, not with our heads. And he tells us that the head's not going to get it, but it's our hearts that's going to get that. And another thing that I noticed is we talk about forgetting. It's so easy for us to forget things and forget them over and over. forget plans that we've made. You were commenting, Samantha, about something that you try and do every morning. And I remember a couple of years ago, I had finally gotten, I forget what they called it, but the Napoleon Hill thing, they would talk about your morning routine. And I had this great morning routine. I had to get up really early to fit it all in, but it was a great one. And then I started with all the hospitalizations and everything, and I had not thought about it for months. And it's just really easy to forget some of these things that we find really help us, and that we want to keep doing. I also wanted to comment, it's kind of strange where I live. I live with a number of people that are considerably older than I am. Excuse me. There's at least two or three that are 89 years old. And um, when you talk with people, early in the morning, a lot of times you'll find that they've had dreams and they're a little bit confused about whether or not they're home in their childhood, or they're with that family. I've had two women who, the one was much younger than that. I don't remember how old she was, but two women that I've talked with fairly regularly who say, um, I was talking with Mother yesterday, or I had a dream about Mother, and I say, well, your mother's in the other world. You're probably talking about your daughter, and they say yes. So I just think it's part of this whole thing where we start to kind of get, the line gets fuzzier.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep getting booted off for some odd reason. So I was trying to jump out and throw in my 2 cents worth, but I think I'm going to get booted off again because looks like everybody's freezing on me. So that usually is my indication I'm going to get booted off. But I'm going to try and say what. Um, for me, I'm still learning and understanding about this process and trying to kind of wrap my head around it. But I do resonate the part with the music because I know there are very certain musics that just really resonate with me and just really, I just, there's something about it that I really just kind of, it puts me into such a good mood and everything. And then there's other music that will just literally, um, uh, be, just totally make me feel um, so out of it, or so disconnected, or so irritated that it's interesting to see, and how music to me is really a big part of something that I really gravitate to and really love, and it's really a part of all that. And but for me, part of what you guys were talking about, like with like you were talking about, Catherine, about towards the end, people, that flashlight beam tends to open up, and I think that, I think for me, the way I put it is that's why we don't use as much of our brain as we have capabilities to use as here, as part of the, maybe as part of the whole learning, understanding, experiencing the things that, according to the book, we plan out and become a part of, um, to experience. That might be part of the agreement that, okay, you have to, a lot of the brain access has to be veiled or shut off or not accessed, so that way we can experience the whole thing in a more um, way to take with us back, to grow from that and to help us maybe make the decisions for the next time that maybe we come through. Like I said, I'm still wrapping my head around a lot of this, and still uh, not sure where I stand on all this. But that's some of what I was thinking of.
I wanted to mention really quick, Dan, since since you're talking about, not sure about wrapping your head around it. And, I think that with all of these books that we have studied, it's, some of them are very reasoning, you can reason it out and it makes sense and blah, blah, blah. But when we're talking about spirituality, it's just this whole other realm that I feel like a lot of times our human self just is kind of coming up with stories we tell ourselves to fully understand these heart feelings, if you will, or these experiences that we have that don't make reasoning sense. And so, when we study stuff like this, we have to remember this is one person's, or many in the case of that he interviews many people, it's their story, if you will, that they're telling themselves to explain what they don't fully understand. And when we resonate with something that is being said, then we know that, oh, okay, so that's something that does it. It connects with me for some reason. I don't know why exactly. So there must be truth in it. And for the things that don't resonate with you, then that is just like filler information, kind of like the stuff to fill in the stuff we don't understand. I don't know. That's just kind of my thought on this, because as I'm reading through it, I'm like, well, I don't know about that, but this, yeah, I completely get that, and that makes a lot of sense. But this other stuff just seems like way too complicated, So, but who knows? I mean, our world is complicated, so maybe we are super complicated about how we set up our lives. I have no idea, but and then what was I also going to say? Oh, and when we were talking about Karen, you were mentioning how we forget sometimes the things that we really enjoy. And I mean, imagine if as a spirit, or as a spiritual, or a spirit body, if you will, having access to everything, every possibility, every experience, every knowledge, every feeling, everything, all at the same time. And I mean, right now we only have a limited experience and we forget stuff, right? So as a spirit, we would be forgetting all kinds of stuff. So it would make sense that we would want to remember those things. And so this experience as a human, we get to do that, and we keep repeating it, because like what you were saying, we think of something that we've done before, and we're like, gosh, I forgot how much I enjoy this, and so that could explain a lot in terms of why would we do this? Because we can, and it's fun. And sure, some of it sucks, but then we also get to see what it feels like after the crappy part is over, and that we got to remember, because we didn't remember that either. So, you know. Um, and then when you're talking about the line gets fuzzier, or the veil, if you will, between human and the spirit world, and or Catherine mentioned fuzzier, and well, and I think you said fuzzier too, whichever the term was, but yeah, I mean, I've noticed this a lot, and different, like when we're dreaming, it feels like the veil is fuzzier, and when I'm meditating, it feels like it's fuzzier. If I'm in an altered state, whether it's meditative or, had a few drinks or, whatever, you get in this kind of altered state, and it seems fuzzier. Or if you are going through a really horrific illness, it's kind of the same thing. You get in this altered state, this altered mind state, and things just don't look the same as they did. And so it's interesting. Yeah, that's it for now.
Yeah, I was laughing when you were talking about that, because sometimes, like, if I'm going through a rough time, it's like, why did I come here? Like, why did I do this? Or like, take me home. I want to go home, back to my planet or wherever I'm from. But it's like, yeah, those rough moments, and it's like, why do we choose this? But then to remember, okay, my soul knows the plan. I'm trusting it.
Well, and one of the things that it brings out somewhere, I think, in this chapter is that, we tend to judge our human lives, this lifetime. As humans, we judge it, like with our brains, with our minds. We form judgments. Let's say that, like there's sort of this annoying, or at least it's annoying to me. There's this concept among the spiritual community that if you're, quote, spiritual enough, that you're not going to be sick, and you're not going to get cancer, and you're not going to do like everything's just going to be fine if you're, quote, spiritual enough. And yet you see people like, you see very prominent spiritual leaders who die of cancer and die of these different ailments. And so, and as humans, we, some people tend to judge that because they have this concept, oh, well, if you're spiritual enough, you're not going to get sick or whatever. One of the things that it points out in this chapter is that just because, every situation brings healing to the soul. So you can have an illness that leads to your death in the human body. That doesn't mean that you failed, that you weren't spiritual enough to heal yourself. It doesn't mean that you failed, that you didn't find somebody spiritual enough to heal you. It doesn't mean that you failed in your mission coming here as a human, because just the experience of having that illness is why you were here. It's not always about being healed of the illness in the physical body. It's the experience of going through the illness, of seeing, typically when somebody has a diagnosis like cancer or something, there's usually people that, friends or family or whatever, that kind of step in and support that person. And you see it over and over and over again, where somebody experiences one of these life-altering situations, and they, for the first time in their life, feel loved because so many people are stepping in and wrapping their arms around them at that point. Now, it's sad that it takes a diagnosis of cancer for people to be able to drop their defenses enough to show somebody else that they love them, if you follow where I'm going there. So it's serving not only the person experiencing the cancer, it's also serving the other people who may not have been able to express their emotion. And I think that's where the mind, our emotions are so freaking powerful. There are some intellectuals that get, kind of turned on with intellectual talk, but a lot of us, the mind has this mind thing that it does, but when somebody's speaking to us, we can tell the difference if they're speaking from their mind or if they're speaking from their heart. You can feel it, right? You can feel it throughout your whole body. It just resonates. I don't know how to describe it, but you can definitely feel the difference when somebody is just running off a list of numbers, or if they're sharing an emotion with you. And this, you guys, well, I think you guys know because I mentioned it. I'm writing a book on pain, and one of the things about pain is that it's so emotion driven. It is unbelievably emotion driven. And I think the mind, as much as I tend to look upon the mind as sort of sometimes I wonder why we have the mind, but I know that it helps keep us out of emotions all the time, because we could be a complete emotional mess if we weren't able to pull out of those emotions sometimes. And they do have, so in other words, you're just in the depth of despair, your mind is able to kind of reason some things out a little bit sometimes and sort of pull you back a little bit, and that could save you from causing your body more damage with some of those emotions. Not damage, but emotions surface. And I know this to be true because when you're in pain all the time, you tend to try to learn why, and it's not always a physical. I guess everything boils down to energy in the end. So in the end, it is energetic, but we don't tend to look at it that way. But, most pain is caused by, if it's not an acute injury, it's caused by a lack of oxygenation. And that lack of oxygenation comes from being tense. And that tenseness comes from underlying emotion, typically. So there's a huge correlation there. And I love that he points out that just because you can't resolve whatever you feel like your issue was, doesn't mean you failed. If you get a diagnosis and you wind up dying from that, that doesn't mean you failed. Everything here serves a purpose for the learning of the soul, regardless of whether we feel like we have adequately addressed it all in this lifetime. You learn through every situation here. So nothing is wasted. No suffering. Like it says, suffering is a gift for everyone involved. And none of that is pointless, I guess, is what I want to say.
I'll step out here real quick. I have to agree with you there, Catherine. I don't think anything is pointless in regards to what you guys are saying at all. Just some amazing things that you guys have covered just in a short period of time. One thing that kept coming up though was to me that I kept hearing was, and I thought it was really interesting about when you talked about the music in the spirit world, and that this idea of being in alignment and resonating kind of kept coming up through your conversations and everything. And I have to say, yeah, that's, if you could, you mentioned the music of the spirit world, and if I could try to imagine, I just thought that was really cool. It's sounding, if you could imagine what that sound and that frequency and that feeling would be, and when Samantha mentioned about her morning routine and filling herself up with positive energy, reminded myself that I'm not taking the time to do that in the morning. But I wake up in a fog and I'm not really like, okay, what, kind of stumble around in the morning trying to get on track. My first thought is not to bring myself into alignment, with positive energy, but gosh, I guess that would be, I'm going to start trying to do that more and make sure that that's at least a few minutes in my routine in the morning. I just have been, I think, like Sandy said, where we can forget that, how many books have we talked about, and how many speakers have we gone to that speak of the power of positive energy in our lives, in our existence here. And we can forget to tune into that and utilize that. I mean, it sounds to me like, I mean, it has a lot to do with it. You mentioned energies, Catherine, and you know, how I've heard where you were talking about pain and tension, and I've heard where if that tension can block the energies from flowing correctly. And then I could imagine that compounding and then creating, you know, more emotions that pull us further out of alignment, you know. So it seems to me like, you know, maybe we, you know, everyone does need to take a, you know, well, first we have to remember to think about it and do it, but you know, take the time to, an effort to, you know, even fight for that alignment, to get into that alignment. But gosh, I mean, you know, if you talk about the blurry lines of this existence, of this spiritual world, and I mean, just thinking about, well, everything you said, and imagine even, you know, with that music from the spirit world, and I mean, at that state, if we're maybe just like a pure energy spirit form, you know, that alignment, maybe that alignment is you know, what they talk about as the music, and tuning into that frequency, that you know, and putting that energy, you know, building that energy up from within us, because I think we have that ability to kind of pull that make that spark. But I definitely hear it with music and harmonics, and you know, I mean, just the right music can put you into that right frame of mind. I think it all does sort of make sense, but that maybe we don't have to necessarily understand it in a coming from a mind point of view, but from an alignment point of view, we sort of can have a different sort of understanding and benefit, you know, from it, and control it a bit with our own thoughts and feelings and efforts, right? So, gosh, great job with that synopsis, Sandy, in the beginning. That really was terrific. Thank you so much. And it's so glad to be here. Wow. A lot of great stuff to think about.
I was going to jump out for a second on top of what Jason just said, and then going back to some of the things you guys have said, because now that made me think that I'm going to one thought I'm having. I'm wondering if in the spirit world, if that music is the same for everybody, or if we all have our own signature frequency of music, and that's what resonates with us. And here, when we hear something similar to that, if that's part of what can help. And I'm in my mind, and part of what my heart's wrapped around is that how much music does for me, and how much it can really temper my feelings, and sometimes take me out of a funk, or pull me back out of a funk, and help reset, like what you were saying, Jason, to kind of. And I'm wondering if that's, you know, one of those things where um you know, being energy and wavelengths that we are, if that's part of the understanding, and once we can understand that a little better, then when we do get those wrapped up in those emotions, and those emotions are coming in really hard and strong, and taking that moment to recognize it. And I think that's the biggest part of it, is recognizing it, and then to be able to say, oh, whoa, wait a minute, okay, I need to realign or reset, or, you know, get back to center, rather than let myself stay over here. And finding that frequency that kind of recenters us, that I can go with, that I can get with, and that I can kind of like, oh, okay, I'm so over here. And sometimes we don't recognize we're so over here until we can kind of learn something like this, where it's like, oh, that's where I'm at. to recognize it, to be able to then make those steps and choices and do those things to help kind of recenter and realign, and for whatever, where we're headed and where we're going with on the path that we're on in our lifetime here.
As I've listened to each of you speak, I've been curious as to how many of us have had these thoughts or had this look at life prior to discussing this book. I know that Catherine has. I know that I have, because I've talked about how much I value the idea of a pre-existence, and thought about that, what that could be like. But as I've looked through this book and thought about the emotional end of things, which I find really confusing to me. I was telling somebody, I don't remember who it was the other day, that I've always been a person who cries easily. I can be in a meeting, I can be talking with people, listening to people on a podcast, I can, watch TV and have tears running down my eyes and not know really what that relates to necessarily. But as I thought about it more in reference to the book, and my curiosity about my life and how well I'm doing, am I on my sales plan? Am I on my soul's plan, or am I not? Have I been off of it for years and years and years, maybe my whole life? Part of what I thought about were the concepts of jealousy and competition. Now, I would have told you most of my life that I didn't really believe in jealousy. In fact, I remember really putting down my second husband. We got married and he said something about how he would be jealous about such and so a thing. And I said, that's just, jealousy's like a second emotion to something else. Somebody had told me that, and I thought I was really brilliant to have this idea. And I said, jealousy doesn't even make sense. And then I always thought I was not competitive. I don't enjoy competitive sports nearly like I enjoy the kinds of things that I enjoy doing, like, well, this was many years ago, but climbing and rappelling and pressing and caving and all these different kinds of things that basically people do to kind of compete with themselves. But the fact is that if I look at my life, even if I look at a chunk of my life, if I look at a day of my life, I can think about what's going on in my head and realize that, by the way, if you wonder why I'm looking this direction instead of this direction, I can see larger pictures this way, so I'm not totally insane. But anyway, I can think in my head about my thoughts about how I don't understand why this person needs to constantly tell a story. If I tell a story, then why does she constantly have to tell a story after I tell a story? How can she never let it be that I'm telling a story and I, maybe want to talk about that, or maybe just want to walk away? Why does she have to finish it up with, oh yeah, well, and so I think about, how easily I could take even just those two things and screw my life up with, having judgmental thoughts over those things. I don't know if in this chapter so much he talks about judgment as he does later on. but judgment is one of the biggest things that we as humans do that creates a wrench in our lives. Anyway, those were my thoughts during this last little bit.
Everybody's shared so many wonderful things today. We're almost at the top of the hour, so if anybody has any final thoughts before we wrap up today, that would be helpful, enjoyed, whatever. You know.
I thought it was interesting. Karen, when you said, yeah, I don't know if I'm on my soul, if I've been on my soul path, and my first thought was, I think that we're always on our soul path, even if we don't think we are. But then my mind started going, well, there's been times too where I think, well, I messed that up. That wasn't my soul plan or whatever. So it's something to think about too. Like, I don't think in the big scheme of things we're off of our soul's plan, but I think, yeah, we can think that too. And it reminded me of that part in the chapter where it said, like, someone who maybe is come into this life as having alcoholism or homelessness, but that's their soul plan, and that may bring other people to open up their compassion. So even in these things where it looks bad or judged on this earth, like it's a plan. So, I was thinking of times when I've had problems with alcohol, I would judge myself so bad, like, this isn't the plan, but it was the plan because I wouldn't be who I am or where I am if I didn't experience what I went through with alcoholism. So even those things where it's judged here, I think it's part of our growth and our plan to become even more of what we are. So, yeah. Good topic. Great discussion. I have to get ready to go to my office, so I'm going to run in the background here.
Yeah, I'll jump out too on that thought of what Karen and Sandy was saying, because I think even in the book a little bit, he talks about that, there's, I can't remember where exactly in this chapter, but where that there is the free will part, and sometimes that those little free will moments, or those times where when we feel, for the book purposes, that we're not on our soul plan, but that we're off, or something happened, or we're not on the path we're supposed to be. I think sometimes those little moments are the additional parts that we're maybe didn't plan to learn along the way per se as part of the whole process, but they're the added elements that help make the overall experience that much better, maybe, or add dimensions we didn't think of when we originally maybe thought up the plan, or whatever. And it doesn't take us totally off the game, but it might have us do a little detour and have to think of alternatives or things or something, that how to maybe, like, going back to what I was saying earlier, getting back to that realignment and that being centered and back to where, and so that way we can make that growth even that much more enhanced and learn from it for whatever the next part of when this life is done and we move on to the next whatever. That's my little bit for my final thing.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And I think often, or at least for myself, I tend to kind of judge my life by the ease that it's flowing. I always feel like if it's flowing easily that I'm on the right path, but that's probably a misconception because we didn't come here for it to be easy. We came here to learn the hard shit, right? So I really should be celebrating more when I'm in the hard shit than when I'm in the easy flow. So who knows? But, I just want to remind everybody that even though you may not consider yourself a medium or a channel, maybe you don't hear voices in your head, or maybe you don't get visions, spirit, your soul, your guides, whoever, um, is always communicating with you through your feelings. And so feelings are very important. Sometimes, again, there's feelings and there's feelings. Sometimes there's feelings that arise because of mind activity. Maybe we let our fear get out of control or something, and that throws us into a spiral um, of the wrong kind of feelings. But I'm talking about just feelings that wash over you from seemingly nowhere. Sometimes that is simply, a message, someone trying to reach out to you from the other side. So always pay attention to those feelings, even when they don't seem to make any sense where they come from. Why am I all of a sudden feeling this? Or, it could be somebody that you're very closely connected to is feeling that right now, because we are so connected. I don't know if, everybody on the earth right now is necessarily connected, or if we have our own little groups. Like, I'm not sure how exactly that all works, but I know that, when I'm at a place where I feel like I'm not contributing, I don't know what to do next, I'm in despair and don't know how to get out of it. Sometimes even if I wake up and I can't sleep, like, my fallback, my go-to is the Gayatri Mantra. And I'll just start singing that, which that is it's a mantra for the enlightenment of everyone. It's enlightenment for everyone, for all human beings. And so it's a prayer. It's a prayer that's sung. And that prayer, that mantra, has one of the highest vibrations that I have ever felt. It helps if I'm helping someone transition and they're fighting it. I can sing that song, and they seem to ease, and it increases the vibration in the room. I don't know what it does. I don't know how it works, but somehow they quit fighting death and they transition. And so when I'm at a point where I don't know what to do next, I just sing that song, because I figure, well, what else could be better for the world than enlightenment of all, because I think that's what we're here for. So that's my final thoughts.
That's terrific, Catherine. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you, everybody, for all the great points and wonderful insights that you have. I think I'm going to pull out of this, what I pull out of this today is to try to recalibrate with, a little positive energy in the morning. And I'm going to try to watch out for any judgment, whether judging myself or others or anything, and just try to stay away from those negative emotions. What do I have down here? Oh, distractions. Try to not be distracted from being in alignment by other things. And my secret weapon's going to be music. I'm going to find something that puts me in that higher state that I can use. So thank you so much for all of that. I think this is really going to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason, for sharing those kind of sum up points and the things that you got out of that. I think that's really helpful, and that's a great idea to, you know, when we have these discussions, is to kind of take the notes and see how we're going to apply it in our lives. And yeah, Catherine, when you were talking about you know, we're appreciating when it's going nice and smooth, but yet at the same time, the hard parts are the parts that really teach us something. And, you know, the other day I was thinking about that. I'm like, right now, I just feel like, you know, my life is going well. I'm enjoying it. And I'm just having a lot of gratitude for everything in my life right now. But I had this random thought of, oh hell, what's coming next? You know, I went through all this crap to get here. What do I have to go through next? I'm only partway through my life, you know, so there could be a whole shitstorm coming and I wouldn't even know it. And I'm like, no, I just want to enjoy this peace for a while. But who knows what the next step is? Who knows what is going to come? Yeah, exactly. Who knows? But I have to just remember, you know, to just try not to let it distract me, to look for whatever it is that I am supposed to get out of it, whatever that might be. And you know, it was kind of interesting. We were talking about emotions and how they can affect the body, and how, you know, we can have negative emotions that compound, and then our body kind of lets us know in some kind of a physical ailment kind of a way. And you know, and I noticed recently I was having this kind of discomfort in my body, and realized that it was something that I kept saying to myself about. And I was like, oh, I gotta stop saying those words, because that's affecting me physically. And you know, so anyway, it was just kind of a good reminder to change what we're thinking, so that we can help ourselves heal. And you know, I can't remember, there was a book or something I came across a while back that was talking about that. You know, where we say these random phrases, and I can't think of one off the top of my head. I wish I could, because it would be, you know, it would be a really good one. But, or like a pain in the neck. You know, we talk about something being a pain in the neck, and then, you know, later your neck hurts, and you don't connect the two. But then, you know, we should connect the two, and really see those words that are coming out of our mouths, because they do affect us emotionally and physically. So anyway, that's what I was thinking of just now. So with that, guys, this has been a great chat, and I love you guys so much. I'm so glad we're able to get on here, and I have so much gratitude for us as a group to be able to do this, because I've talked to, and my husband talks to people all the time. He has so many people that he talks to regularly, and he hears about how so many people are struggling with the separation anxiety from, you know, with the whole COVID thing going on. And I'm like, you know, I have you guys, and I have, you know, I'm more of an introvert, so that helps. But if I wasn't, I would be so thankful that I could just come here every week and be with you guys, and have that, you know, sure, we're not right next to each other, we can't physically hug one another, but we can definitely be looking at each other and talking and expressing, and that, I feel like that's just a huge thing. I wish more people could have that, so, or realize it's even possible. I know people don't even know you can get on with video with people and have a big conversation. So anyway, that's that. I guess I'll just wrap it up. Have a great, awesome, amazing week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.